Hello, I'd like to welcome you all to the Power of Our Story. We are a place of protectors who want to protect other protectors. We're a place of safety and in a non-judgment zone. We have like 6 weekly groups, so please feel free to connect with me if you'd like to know more about it. You can just connect with me on LinkedIn, either through The Power of Our Story or Sarah Carell. So today I am absolutely thrilled to introduce Elizabeth. She is Elizabeth Hartman. She is a Marine Corps veteran and dedicated advocate. Liz brings a wealth of experience and a passionate commitment to supporting those who have served our country. She strives to raise awareness, provide guidance, and create a positive impact, ensuring that the contributions of our military are acknowledged and honored. And all of us that are on LinkedIn, we see Liz's passion. She is such an advocate for our protectors, and it's such an honor to have Elizabeth on today. So, Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's great to see. It's like a year later. It's great to see you.
Yes, it has been. Well, listen, tell us about yourself, a little bit of your background and, leading up to how a person can be so passionate like you are and advocate so powerfully. Tell us, yes,
Yeah.
share with
So
us.
I guess it all started in 1990. I was born in Akron, Ohio, greatest state in the world. But I joined the Marine Corps in 2011. I separated. I was a medical separation, separated in 2014. Got my bachelor's, then my master's, and then I worked for the Department of State for a while. After a good stint with DOS, I decided to jump to private finance. That allowed me to have a little bit more autonomy with my schedule. And I've been working as a financial advisor in North Carolina since, but I think I'm much more well known in the advocacy world. I am just a very loud and aggressive advocate for veterans and military. That's my passion, particularly legislative affairs. I am acutely aware of how the veteran population is declining, whether we like it or not. We're out of a draft era, so our numbers are shrinking. And if we don't come together as one, no one's going to lobby on our behalf. So that is my passion. I have no idea why. And I just, quite frankly, enjoy yelling every day. So it works out well. You're muted.
Thank you. Did you learn the yelling from being in the Marines? Was
I
that
didn't. I was a boot lance
learned?
corporal, never got to yell at anyone. So it was, I think it's my hair. It just comes out with the ginger red. So it was in my blood.
Oh gosh, that's great. So tell us, do you have any stories of, again, with your passion and your advocacy, and especially with legislation, what are your proudest moments in seeing something happen?
I have two that I can share. One's really timely, but I kind of want to rewind to an older one. In 2022, as many people can remember, we were fighting for the PACT Act, which is the largest expansion of veterans health care since the creation of the Department of Veterans Affairs. And the American Legion was pushing out, memos, messages, action alerts, trying to get people to message their congressmen and their senators about it. It was going okay. We thought it was going to pass. And then I remember we got a message where essentially overnight Congress did what Congress does. They politicized something that shouldn't be politicized, and it wasn't going to pass. So the American Legion sent out this action alert and said, hit up Congress, let them know right now, times are dire, let them know how you feel. And over a 24-hour period, we got 34,000 messages sent to Congress. And it was those messages bombarding Congress, because to them, it's not messages, to them, it's votes. So when we can really show them how many people will not vote for them if they don't act a certain way on a certain piece of legislation, they start to get scared and they start to reconsider, their decisions. And shortly thereafter, the PACT Act passed. And here we are today with service members across the country. Millions more now have access to the VA that did not 2 years prior.
Oh, great. Excellent. Wow, the power of that.
Of a voice, of a
Of
story, of one person just engaging. It is incredibly meaningful.
That is incredible. I already took away a huge golden nugget, a huge reminder how powerful that is. Thank you. And tell us about the other story.
Oh, so the one is kind of currently going on. Um, so the American Legion, all of your veteran service organizations, any nonprofit, they're always going to have a legislative agenda, but then they're going to have priorities. Those are going to be the things that they think they can get passed during any given Congress. And it came to my attention that on Friday of last week, February 2nd, the American Legion dropped AAA, or the Afghan Adjustment Act, from its legislative priorities. And that bill in particular is very meaningful for me. I am very passionate about ensuring our Afghan allies and all of our allies, be them Iraqi, Afghan, doesn't matter, are provided a means of permanent refuge in the United States of America. And it was brought to my attention that the American Legion dropped it from their priorities. And I did what I do best. I lit up LinkedIn over it. Anybody who follows me there knows I got quite passionate, quite loud, and quite aggressive. And just yesterday, the American Legion chose to participate in a press conference over the Afghan Adjustment Act. And so that's a timely example of how powerful one voice can be if you get loud and if you talk about the things people to your left and right care about and you band together as one voice.
That's awesome. So I'm going to wait till we open it up so people can ask more specific questions in response. I just want to just ask one more question too.
Yeah.
With everything that you're seeing, what do you feel very passionate about even going forward? What is your concern, or what do you really want to see people rally together and pay attention to?
Oh, there's too many things. That's like a very broad
That's a
question,
hard
Sarah.
one.
I would say if I had to narrow it down right now, I'm incredibly passionate about providing a means of permanent refuge for our allies. That's always at the top of my mind. To
Mm,
me, that is the one piece of legislation that signals to global war on terror veterans that we see you, we hear you. We might not have served in Afghanistan, we might not have ever seen combat, but that's the way that we can genuinely show them we care and we're going to fight your fight with you. And then I'm also incredibly passionate about shutting down predatory actors in the claim sphere. I think they're scumbags, and I hate the idea that there are people actively profiting off of veterans. I'm a firm believer that if there is something wrong with the VA, and there is, it's not perfect. We need to fix the VA because it is not a predatory system. It's not. It's a non-adversarial system. The moment you cross over into private healthcare, it's adversarial. We're all just another dollar. And so I'm very, very passionate about seeing those bad actors put in prison, maybe like hang them in the street. I don't know, but that's my other passion project.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing all that. I want to defer to our protectors to have this conversation. So, guys, I want to open it up to you. And Liz, thank you so much. You are very inspiring. I think you remind us all that if we have the courage to just speak out and to speak as one voice, attract people to whatever needs attention, that there's so much we can do together, that we're more powerful together. So, um,
Absolutely.
thank you for modeling that so beautifully. It's amazing. You live up to your red hair.
Thank you. That's such a nice compliment.
I love it. So I want to open it up for conversation.
Hey, Sarah, I'm gonna jump right in and volunteer Don. I know Don is just he's chafing at the bit. He's a Marine.
Hit me, Don. What do you got?
It's all you. You are on the spot right now.
Well, it's kind of interesting because in my intro, I didn't introduce myself. I probably well. I just moved to North Carolina a little over a year ago. I belong to, I think it's the second largest American Legion in the United States, which is Newport Beach, California. I still hold my membership there. And since coming to North Carolina, all I have found is smaller, not so active legions. But I've got this desire to get involved. And I'm looking for guidance in how to get more into it. And I watch Elizabeth all the time. I mean, I read every one of your posts and I'm like, gosh, if I only lived in New Bern.
Come help us here.
So I don't know necessarily how to get more actively involved, but it's something that's been gnawing at me a lot lately. And now that it's been a year, I'm just looking for a direction to actually be able to lend a hand. And I do write to my Congress people, or my Congresswoman happens to be up here and just a little bit up the road from me. And lately I've been writing to both of my senators and expressing where I stand on things. Not on the veteran side just yet, but it's certainly not too far off of my future for things I'm going to be doing here. I have their ear. They've actually been responding. They've gotten out of the auto response canned letters to actually addressing the things that I've been writing to them specifically about.
Congratulations, Don. That's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I've been more vocal on, even on LinkedIn. And when I read people's things, I'm like, look, guys, none of your representatives are reading your LinkedIn posts. You need to call them, you need to write them, and you need to be very specific about what it is you want, and every letter with, and I'm watching you.
So that is my blueprint for how to get involved for the American Legion for you. Now that they're giving you not canned emails, reach out to their staffers and see, would you guys be interested in coming to a town hall if I organized it to talk to veterans about legislation y'all are working on that would be interested to them? They will always say yes, because they always want an audience. And then suddenly your post looks so much more relevant because you're bringing in these heavy hitters. That's a great way to get.
And I like that idea. And funny little side story here. One of my senators lives in the town I live in. He grew up here, and my neighbors across the street, his kids played ball with him. So I kind of got a little bit of an in with him in that regard. So I will definitely be chewing on his ear.
Yeah, that's a great way to get the community involved, and it doesn't have to be Legionnaires, right? You can open it up to any veteran, their spouses, their families. That's a great way to get folks involved and elevate the brand of the American Legion.
Great. Yeah, I on my list.
This is Brian. Can I jump in?
Please do, Brian.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. I live in the southeast area of LA County. I'm an Air Force veteran, Vietnam War veteran. Fortunately, didn't have to serve in country, but did serve with a lot of Vietnam veterans. I'm also active in the American Legion as a congressional liaison, and Liz and I kind of follow each other on LinkedIn. I'm also active in the Vietnam Veterans of America, and as a congressional liaison for the American Legion, it gives us face-to-face with members of Congress. I'm assigned to the 42nd Congressional District in California, Congressman Robert Garcia, and I meet with his people regularly. And that's a great way, if you're so inclined there, and there's an opening as a congressional liaison for your chapter or congressional district, do volunteer, because you have immediate access as a congressional liaison to your members of Congress, and also state legislators and whatnot. And Liz, I want to compliment you on not backing down on your choice of a salty word or two describing how you would do it all over again to join the Marine Corps that you posted on LinkedIn, and somebody took offense to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I wrote back to that individual. I said, it's a Marine thing, and unless you're one, you wouldn't really understand.
Well, you got it, Brian. So you're in the club. So
yeah, absolutely. And I use them occasionally on LinkedIn too, but oftentimes I get scolded from so-called professionals saying you shouldn't use LinkedIn for that platform. But you keep at it, Liz, and I love your flaming red hair.
And keep doing what you're doing on the NLC. Every single meeting counts. Thank you so much for what you're doing out there.
You too.
Thank you, Brian. Awesome. So anybody else have any questions or comments?
Liz, if I may ask you, for those that are following in your steps, and I think that it's easy when people start to get into this type of work to find it frustrating because you keep hitting walls.
Oh, yeah.
What is it that drives you forward? What is it that keeps giving you that pill? Is it the small little victories? How do you overcome those things so that people keep on driving?
I think there is that's a tough, Chris. I'm trying to think of an easy way to answer that question. It's the small wins, but I don't really know how to explain the small wins. For me, it means a lot when I see that people start to get loud, and it's hard to quantify that. But when I'm able to get people saying, oh my God, we do need to fight for our allies, that means a lot to me. Another small win that I always seek is I love when my guys at the Post start talking about this stuff at the Post. You know, when they start saying, yeah, we need a new Iraq authorization for use of military force, right? Like when they're suddenly saying all this jargon and you can see it, that means a lot to me. I like to see people talk about politics. And so anytime I see someone talking about politics, that's a win for me. In the American Legion, there's this terrible misconception that we're not a political organization, and it's factually incorrect. We are a political organization. We are a nonpartisan organization. We will stand behind policy and fight for policy that we believe in. And there's nothing wrong with an American citizen fighting for policy that they believe in. And when I can get that light bulb to go off in someone's head, that one day you can bash a Democrat and one day you can bash a Republican, and it doesn't have to be partisan, and you can break from the mold and you can fight for what you believe in, that is my little win. And so I try to look for those every day where you can break through to one person.
I think a lot of us in this, you know, the veterans and things like that, we're used to seeing big impact, immediate impact. And I think that some of the smallest wins are actually the largest wins. Just to see somebody else's fire just kind of ignite, that's a huge thing. And for us that are trying to fight, to recognize those small wins, and it's not as insignificant as you might think. So thank you.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, you said it right. Even if you just get one other person to be passionate, that is such a huge win. I think in today's society, everybody's almost checked out, it seems like. Nobody wants to engage in the conversation. So if one person is suddenly passionate, that's a win. It's definitely a different win than the military, right? Like, it's not a war, but it's a win nonetheless.
Maybe one more difficult question. What is the personal cost other than time for someone who's doing this?
Ooh, that's a timely question right now. I have experienced a lot of heat, quite a bit of pushback for how loud I've been on social media lately from the national organization, right? You definitely get to a certain point where nobody wants to be critiqued, and I have at least attempted. I've attempted to take pride in that. I'll shout out the wins where I see them, and I'm gonna highlight the losses where I see them. I'm gonna highlight the problems where I see them, no matter who is responsible for that problem. And recently, with how aggressive I've been over Afghan Adjustment Act and the American Legion's decision to drop it from priorities, I've experienced quite a bit of pushback, and that is tough. It's definitely tough for me. It's very easy for some reason, I think our brains are just set where you can read a positive comment and you're like, oh, that's nice. But when you read a negative comment, man, it hits you so much more than 100 positive comments. So that's, I think, the dark side of advocacy. You definitely put yourself out there. You open yourself out for a lot of criticism. And that's something I would encourage people to just make sure you have a sounding board, someone you can always go home to and say, you know, keep me on the straight and narrow.
Well, thank you for your Semper Fidelis warrior spirit. And,
raw Semper Fidelis.
And I know that it bleeds through, and you can tell just by the people that have shown up on this meeting today, the impact that you're having. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. And that's, you know, it's, you just know that.
Yeah. And I would add a couple.
Oh, who just talked? Bobby, please go.
And,
yes.
You know, and I would echo what Liz was talking about. Is sometimes there's a price, and it might be a small price, might be a big price, but one of the things I'm passionate about is military transition. I've been working in this space since 2009. It influenced me to go back to grad school, use my GI Bill, or go to grad school, never been in the first place. And so, you know, fast forward through, I worked for Army TAP for 5.5 years, and I'm a big advocate of it, but I'm also a big critic of it. And so I was very careful when I was working for TAP, but once I switched, you know, came back over to the VA, what has ended up happening is a lot of my peers that used to be very willing to engage on LinkedIn, most of them now are silent. towards any of my comments or anything when I'm being critical of the system. I'm also very quick to still point out strengths of it, like the financial counselors that are available, different things, but people don't hear that I'm complimenting some of the hardworking people that work in that system. They're very good at what they do. They only hear that I'm critical of the components of it, the lack of command support, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't really paid a price necessarily professionally, but personally, it kind of hurts when those people that you kind of used to look at as a colleague or even a friend, that all of a sudden they're radio silent. And so that's what happens. And I see that a little bit on the VA side. You know, I'm in my current role. I've been here for about 3.5 years, and I'm pretty vocal. My boss knows it. I have great supportive, direct, the couple supervisors above me. But sometimes, if you're pointing out a problem, then once again, people are tuning you out. But if you continue to have it, the reality is you still have a blast radius. So, I can't get away from my Army language, but if you are determining points where you can make an influence, and for me, it's the one-on-one. I'm a frontline provider. I work with veterans every day. I work with medical separations. We get referrals for them, and we try to integrate them into the VA system as effectively as possible. And I'm passionate about it. So when I'm pointing out problems, I'm trying to do it in an articulate manner that's quantifiable. Here's the impact on patient care, et cetera. And some people, it resonates with them, and others are like, well, you're out of your lane. All right. I'm just telling you what I see. So I would echo everything Elizabeth said. And for you, Chris, try to look for ways that if you want to advocate, in your off time, so to speak, with a VSO or a volunteer organization. It doesn't even have to be a VSO. It could be the Lions Club in your community that you're going to relocate to after your retirement that happens to have a focus on veterans. Or if you're in a community like mine, we have the second highest density of veterans in the state of Arizona. It's like 11 or 12% veterans in the county. So no matter where I go, no matter where anybody in my county goes, there's going to be a veteran. So even if you're not helping them through sort of an officially recognized veteran focused organization, you can still find a way to hunt out those people and be that guy that can absolutely recognize that veteran that's struggling and walk on up to them, introduce yourself and start a conversation and be that person that they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you maybe exchange numbers and there's an opportunity down the road. And, and LinkedIn is an extension of that, of course. My little wins are when someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, I had a question, or hey, I saw you commented on this, or, I'll see somebody commenting on something and you just tell they're struggling, and I'll send them a message. You're like, hey, I'm really sorry to hear that's been your experience with your community, with your school, with your VA or whatever, and just offer that support to them. And that can cultivate conversations on how you can help that person, down the road. So, there's a lot of opportunity there, and you don't necessarily have to look at, okay, how can I help at like this big picture level? Because that's hard to do sometimes, but having a voice, even, like Liz is a great example, you're a local post commander, but your voice is giving you influence at a higher level than is what is commensurate with your current position in, now granted you have the legislative role as well, but even if you didn't have the legislative role, like if tomorrow you resign from that, I would argue that your influence isn't going to change in the LinkedIn space.
Well, Bobby, I don't have that role, so you're right, it didn't change.
So, well, there you go. So, but yeah, you'll find something, Chris. You'll absolutely find something, but don't feel like you have to find that specific role that's a formal role with the title or with a, an organization. Those opportunities will come. Just, find the right ones for you, and some of them will be a fit and some of them won't. It's just that simple,
Yeah, he's spot on, Chris. I think that I say hats because we have to wear hats in the American Legion. You don't need a hat to be a good advocate. There are so many, Matt Quick comes to mind. He's in North Carolina. So many incredible advocates who don't have a hat. And quite frankly, the moment I was able to take mine off, I was able to say the things I really wanted to say and fight for the things that I really believed in. And there's such beauty in just being an advocate and chasing your true beliefs. That's where the true freedom is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Bobby, thanks for your comments also. Scott, what's on your mind?
Unmuting my mic first of all. Yeah, this is a great conversation. I have learned to really respect Elizabeth, what Liz is doing. Her and I connected, I don't know, 4 or 5 years
Long
ago.
time ago. You made that
Yeah,
video about me. You were the start, Scott.
well, I was thinking about that as we're talking in my mind. I'm like, how long ago was that? And I remember as a, an older Marine, chatting and giving advice to Elizabeth, and it's that know your audience thing, right? We didn't know each other that well, and so I was giving her, old guy advice about, well, this Liz is a firebrand. I didn't know that, right? And so I was giving her advice that was a little contrary to that, and it was good advice, but
It was
it's
great
not.
advice, Scott. It was great advice.
Well, but and it's also not for everybody. But then you also grow as a person and what you're doing, and you're at the level of doing exactly what you should be doing, and you're doing it so well. And I am so freaking proud of you as a
Thank you.
Marine,
Thank you.
and just as someone who cares about our service and about our country. Um, you understand priorities, just like knocking on the door saying, if it's a priority, how come it's not on your list?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Oh, don't get
And
me
that
started,
is,
Scott.
no, that is so true. When I was a Marine, I had priorities. I knew my boss's priorities. Mine were nested within his or hers, but folks knew that because it was published. And we talked about it every weekly staff meeting. We went over priorities. If we had to change them, roger that. But we had them. They weren't like this, right? Priorities are up and down. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so thank you for who you are, as a steadfast American, as a, dare I say, patriot,
Yeah.
and certainly as a Marine. And just real quick, Bob, I think Bobby had mentioned about folks telling you to stay in your lane. As a Marine, you would hear that all the time. I was a logistician. And so, when you're talking with the grunts and you may, bleed into something that they feel is theirs, you get that stay in your lane. And it's like, I'll stay in my lane if you stay in your lane. So it's got to be both ways. It's about operations, but if you don't understand the implications of what it is you're asking for, and you're not willing to listen to my experience and my advice on what you would like to have done, there's a little bit of compromise involved here. If you don't know what you don't know, right? It's like, again, know your audience. So when you're advocating, know your audience, know what you're talking about, right? If you're going to have a voice, you better understand what you're talking about. Not that there are things that you'll run across that you didn't know at the time, but know what it is you're passionate about, live it, research it, be able to talk to it, and do what's right. And we need folks to step up and advocate, not just for veterans, but like Don was saying, connecting with your representatives on things that are important to you, things that need attention. Because the more we sit back and just shrug our shoulders and then go look at our phones on something that is designed to distract you, um, the deeper we're going to be in the muck. And, yeah, that's political. But I think we need to understand the importance of our country. And as Liz said, it's the target is the target. It's not one side, it's not the other. It's right down the middle, because those folks need to work together to get done what we want to do. And they're not doing it. So we've got to shake the tree. And I'll just leave it there. Very
Well said,
thankful.
Scott.
Very
Yeah.
thankful for you, Liz, and for your time today. Keep going.
Well
and
said.
and Scott, you really touched the nerve on something that I always encourage veterans to be mindful of is, know your audience. Broadly, what is our audience? Broadly, our audience is the American public, and the large majority of the American public doesn't understand the veteran community. but I would argue that the majority of veterans don't understand the veteran community. So I'm really passionate about people knowing the basics and having it down pat. I see all these comments, and this is my worst, nerve, is I see veterans commenting all the time and active duty commenting all the time about the 1%. Active duty is the 1%, less than 1%. The veteran population ain't 1%, folks. But I see veterans and advocates saying it all the time. Oh, we got to support the 1% that's going to the VA. And they'll talk about PTSD being a leading cause of suicidality for the veterans population. Guess what? It's the number 4 diagnosis for veterans. There's 3 in front of it. So people are talking about things that they don't have knowledge of, but we have to remember that people are going to look at us, all of us as veterans. It didn't matter if you served a year and a half and you're commenting on strategic policy for U.S. Army Africa, or you are a 3-star general, or anywhere in between. People assume we know our shit. And oftentimes we're not speaking from a place of knowledge. And that's, Liz never does that. She's going through very specific information when she's addressing legislative issues. She's talking about very specific things down at a local level that a community or a post is doing. And that's incumbent on us as veterans to be part of the accurate information that's getting sent out to the American public and even to our own veteran community, and not generalize. I mean, same thing for VA. I'm very fortunate as a VA patient that most of the care I've received is pretty damn good at 3 VA systems. Not every veteran has had my same experience. So I'm not going to go out and say the VA is awesome across the board, because it's not. And I'm not going to say that they suck across the board, because they don't. And so that's something that, as we're, wading into our new veteran identity, when we hang up the uniform, we really need to be conscious of making sure that we're not putting out inaccurate information, because then it's just going to perpetuate some of these stigmas and widen that military civilian divide that all of us are concerned with. And, and like, that breaks my heart when I see, it used to just irritate the crap out of me, but now it just makes me sad, less than irritating me. It's like, oh man, there's another veteran or spouse or active duty service member that's giving their perspective, and they're not framing it that way. If someone says my experience has been great, that's their experience. But if they say all veterans, all my buddies, all this, all that, then it really, we're not doing ourselves any favors, because now we're muddying the waters on what the core issues are, and we're not. And in the VA, in full disclaimer, I'm not saying this is a VA employee, but as a veteran, I see a lot where the messaging coming out of the VA from official, PAOs, national level folks are not either portraying it accurately or at least completely. So what does that lead the veteran to believe that's kind of wading into the, the veteran realm or VA care for the first time? It can create some problems. So that's one of the things I appreciate is, we're all talking about Liz being a firebrand, but I don't think you're a bomb thrower. I don't think that, my personal, view of how you're going about doing it is this loud, but it's articulate. And we can't just be loud. We got to fire for effect on the things that we want to accomplish, and be able to quantify it on how it affects us, how it affects, funding, whatever it is. That's the approach that if we're taking it that way. And this is also going back to you, Chris, you're a retiree, so you have a ton more knowledge than the majority of service members out there, of veterans out there. Once you hang up that uniform and you feel like maybe you're a little more empowered because you're not in the Army anymore, and you kind of have that license to go tell it like it is, and hopefully, make some change. And of course, all of this circles back to how it impacts, not as much retention, but it does, but certainly recruiting on the front end, and how we have literally a national security crisis because of it. So.
Well, Bobby, thank you. And it just is a testament to how trusted you are, Liz, which is, really cool. You have the courage. You're clearly putting out information that is truthful. And that's why people trust you. and you just have that integrity that people I think are really wanting so badly right now. So again, it really says a lot about your character. Thank you. And then Leo.
Thank you.
Hey, Elizabeth, thank you for what you do. What are your thoughts on the power of hope?
Leo, I don't think I would be advocating if I had no hope, right? I am always hopeful that one day Congress is going to reform its ridiculous budget system. Afghan allies are going to be here. Immigration reform has moved through, right? You couldn't be an advocate without hope. So those two go hand in hand. If there is an advocate without hope, I'd love to meet them because I'm sure they're not doing a good job. But that's a great question, Leo. Hope is so important for everything we do.
You should have seen your whole body change when you started to talk about it, man. It's like you
Oh,
flipped the
yeah.
switch. Oh yeah, this is my this is my ground. This is my platform, man. It's really nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too. Also, Holly, I didn't get to say how good it is to see you when we did the intro. So it's so good to see you in real life on Zoom, but you know what I mean.
That's wonderful. Liz, so I'm curious about something. This may open up a whole can of worms, but I'm
Yeah.
going to ask anyway. How does that impact you? How do you view this whole border crisis and then your passion about saving our allies?
Whew. So I'll try to keep this like nonpartisan best I can. Michael feels my pain. I can see it. Okay, so the first thing I will say is we're in an election year. And so if we view this through strategy, it's very important to consider that it benefits neither party to come together and fix immigration. So it doesn't matter who you plan to vote for. It will help their campaign if they do not fix our border crisis. So that pisses me off. Putting that to the side, I really, really, really struggle with the fact that there are, let's stick with Afghanistan, right? We have Afghan allies who were evac, they are in the United States, and they still don't have a means of permanent refuge. They're living in limbo. That's a problem. And a lot of times I'll see people make this argument and look at all the people walking across the border. Some of those are Afghan families, which they have started down in Chile trying to walk to the border of the United States. They have already been vetted because they can't get in because our government won't do their job. So there is a massive problem with immigration in the United States, whether we're discussing Afghanistan, whether we're discussing the northern border with Canada, which everyone seems to love to skip over, whether we're discussing the southwest border. It is a crisis. We deserve as a people legitimate conversation, which we are not presently getting. And I know I'm probably not giving you what you want me to talk about, but one other thing I will hit on this topic that everyone seems to be glossing over is when Governor Abbott sent National Guard to the border. We all remember that. And then a lot of governors from other states were like, heck yeah, I want to support Governor Abbott. So South Dakota, for instance, sent their National Guard down to the border. Great. They're being activated under Title 32. Because they're not activated under Title 10, they are going to separate from the military service without the same resources as Title 10. Why is that a problem? Because they were sent far away from home, put in an incredibly stressful situation. Nobody understands what the hell they're going through right now. They have stories they're going to be afraid to share because nobody's going to understand it. They're going to politicize everything they say. And they're probably going to bring back some PTSD, whether we like to talk about it or not. And those Title 32 guys and women, guys and gals, they deserve the same services and resources and benefits as Title 10. Because whether we like it or not, and whether we agree with them being activated, whether we agree with them being sent to the border, they are serving and they didn't sign up knowing what they were going to be called to do. So that's another huge concern I have right now with the border crisis that is not being discussed at all. But yeah, hope that answered that.
Wow. And I actually don't even know what those titles are. I see that I need to understand a lot more, but that's heartbreaking. I mean, especially when you think, I heard something like 2.6 million people, like, I don't know what, half of them are unvetted. And yet our people or our allies are not being protected.
Yeah, the immigration across the board is a huge problem uh, that nobody legitimately wants to fix.
Yeah, hey, I want to jump in here real quick because I know we're short on time. I am I'm on fire.
I knew you were gonna jump on this. I was like, you're gonna get Scott going.
Yeah, so I'll try to be professional here, but I will say what's on my mind. I am heartbroken as somebody who spent my entire life, even as a kid, paying attention to things, that happened in the government. And since retiring, I've had more time and I've been watching and I've been paying attention. And our government is failing us. They are lying to us. They are failing our allies in how they operate. I watched the 2.5 or 2+ hour interview last night with Tucker Carlson and Putin. Now, you have to understand who that guy is, right? You can't believe everything he says, but he's not an idiot. And when he starts talking about certain things about what our government was doing, and he says, go ask these people, he can say whatever he wants, but just remember, there are two sides to every coin, and we're not perfect. Our history in America is not perfect, going back to our beginnings, but we, the people, always strive to get it right. And that's where we're going wrong right now, because the people that are up there in Washington are not interested in getting it right. They're interested in what Liz was talking about. It's an election year. They want to do what's going to help party. I get that to a degree. And again, I'm not going to jump headlong because I know we've got she's got to go, but this would be an excellent topic for another time and platform. And I would love to be a part of that if other folks are interested, because maybe we can, we don't have to record it. We can talk and say what's really on our minds.
I
But,
know.
One thing
yeah,
I will
I-
say to sort of help
I-
out Scott, that's where
What's that?
I like. One thing I'll add on to that, Scott, why I like the veteran sphere is because we can all come together if we come together as veterans, right?
Right.
Everybody is going to make it a partisan debate about what's going on at the Southwest border. But if I'm able to say somebody who is activated by their governor deserves the same services as someone activated by the president, then we can start to come together and I think at least address some of the smaller problems, like small wins. We're going full circle here. That's why I always try to find like where's the one thing that we can all hopefully get along on. And Afghan allies like is one of them. But
Oh.
goodness.
I read, I think a lot of us have read Scott Mann's book, The Pineapple Express, where you really see the inside story of what it was like, at the whole Kabul withdrawal at Abbey Gate and what our Afghan partners have gone through. And, you cannot unread and unknow once you see. And I just applaud you for your heart and your care and your passion. Liz, you are a truth seeker. And I think that's why we have so many amazing truth seekers on this call. I know it refreshes my soul to be surrounded by truth seekers who have courage. So I'm very grateful just for this talk and to have you all on. Liz, I want to leave the last comment. Does anybody else have a comment before I ask Liz this
Any
last question?
questions? You guys got me the most contentious one. Good job. You worked it in.
What's
Any
that?
other hard the Southwest border? Good question.
I knew
Any
that
other
would probably
tough
be a big
questions?
one.
How about Brian?
Brian, yes.
Yeah, I just want to add, Sarah, how much I appreciate what you've done in the mil vet space over the last 3 years, bringing our voices, and not just those who served, but the entire family serves, as you know, and bringing those voices to a platform that is so successful. And I forget often how much work it must have taken on your part to get that going, and the skepticism you may have faced for just being a spouse of a service member. You women are killing it in the space, including
folks like Liz. And thank you so much.
Mhm.
Exceptional work, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. By the way, I'm not a spouse. I was not connected. It was through a veteran story that blew my mind. I said, we need to be in this with our protectors. And I do now have a son who's serving. So
Okay, I got confused on that.
That makes
Thank
it
you for
even
your
better.
family. Yeah, it's even better. Yeah.
oh, that's okay. No, Brian, thank you so much for your comments. And Liz, if you can, now that you have all of us listening right here. And by the way, I just want to remind everybody, remember that people's silence on LinkedIn, everybody is trying to figure out how they should present themselves and show up. It does not mean that you don't have a mass amount of people getting empowered by your voice. Please don't ever forget that. And Liz, I cannot imagine the empowering that's happening with your voice. Even if people who are loud, who are pushing back on you, there's so many people that are eating it up until they start saying, I can't stand this anymore. I need to say something. So, Liz, I just admire you so much. What do you want to leave us with? What do you hope that we will all do listening to your talk today?
I would hope that after this, everyone feels a little more inspired to talk about politics. But I would challenge you to chat with someone who you might not agree with and just time yourself, see how long you can make it in the conversation before you want to punch a wall, and then do it again tomorrow and see if you can make it a little bit further. And always challenge yourself. I am aggressive. I know my tone is aggressive, and there's no problem with being aggressive, but I try to seek out those things that can bring us together. So even if you're talking about something that's really contentious like immigration, try to seek out those subtopics that can bring us together as a community, and just remember that no one is going to fight for first responders and veterans like first responders and veterans. And so it's so important that we come together as one. That's it.
I love that. Liz, you're amazing. I appreciate you so much. And all of you too. I
For having
love
me.
your comments. I appreciate you so much. And Liz, thank you. I'm going to be watching
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Holly, it's so good to see you. Thank you for everything you have done. It's a pleasure to finally see you on here.
I'm thrilled to hear you, and thank you for your passion and your courage. It means a lot to me personally. The Afghan allies mean more to me than I can put into words. So thank you for caring about them.
I know. Right back at you, hon. Thank you for telling your story every single day.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.